In this tutorial, you're gonna learn how to build a full-stack product store by using some of the coolest technologies, such as Postgres, Express, React, and Node, aka the PERN stack. Let me give you a quick showcase of the end result that we're gonna build in this video, and then we'll talk about the details. So there's gonna be 13 different themes that we can choose from. We can add a product that has a name, price, and an image. We can visit a specific product page where we can update data and delete the product. And once we delete the product, we will be navigated back to the home page. And there is a refetch button that would allow us to get the latest data from the database. So with this project, you will learn how to build an API, connect to a Postgres database, write SQL code, test your endpoints, and build a responsive UI design. On top of these, you will learn some advanced concepts like rate limiting and bot detection. Also, you're gonna learn how to structure your files and folders in a clean and scalable way. Whenever we learn a new concept, first we will see the explanations and examples on a diagram, then we will jump into the code and see the implementation. And in this way, you will understand everything that we will learn in this video. At the end of this course, we will learn how to deploy this application for free. So overall, this course will be a great resource to anyone who wants to practice the technology stack that you see on the screen. With that, if you're ready, let's get into it. So to get started with, I have created an empty folder on my desktop. I have called this as PERN stack tutorial, and then I just open it up in VS Code. This is the name that I came up with. You can call this anything that you wish. So before we try to create any files or folders, let's try to understand our tech stack in a better way. Then we'll just jump back into the code. So if you don't know already, PERN stands for Postgres, Express, React, and Node. So Postgres is the relational database that we're gonna have. Express is the web framework that will allow us to build an API pretty easily and quickly. So it has all the built-in features that you can expect from. Then React is the front-end library that will make the front-end such a breeze, I would say. And Node.js is the JavaScript runtime. So what that means, basically, it will allow us to run JavaScript on the server side, right? So back in the old days, we were able to run JavaScript only in the browser, only in the client. Now we can run it on the server side, thanks to Node.js. Okay, so with this in mind, let's take a look at the Postgres. So if you have ever used something like MongoDB, it is a NoSQL database, which means it stores the data in collections. And Postgres, on the other side, is a SQL database. It means we have tables to be able to store our data. And to give an example, in this video, we're going to be building a products table where we have rows and columns. So here you can see each of these are a column, such as ID, name, price, image, created at, and updated at. And each of these documents are a row, right? Or I should say each row is a document. So this is our very first product, which is a premium wireless headphones. And this is the price, image, so on and so forth. So in total, we have 10 different products. Okay, so just to give an example, this is kind of like the table that we're gonna build in this video. And then in this video, we're not gonna be using any kind of ORMs. If you don't know what that means, basically it is a database tool that allows you to connect to your database and interact with it without writing any SQL code. So instead, we're not going to be using these in this video, such as Prisma or Drizzle, but instead we'll be writing some raw SQL code. I think this is super important to understand as a beginner instead of just jumping into the ORMs. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now we can go back to our VS Code and try to write some code. So I'll just open up my terminal, and I would like to create two different folders. If you want to create it from the terminal, you can just say make directory and call the backend. So we just get that one, and now we can run the front end. Or you could run both of them at the same time, but here we just go step by step. Then in the root, I'll just say npm init-y is going to create a Node.js application. There we go, we just got the package.json file. This file will be important later in the video when we want to deploy our entire application. So I'll just clear up my terminal with Command K. If you're on Windows, you can just say CLS. Okay, now let's try to get a couple of different packages for the backend. In the first part of this video, we'll be focusing on the backend. We're gonna build our API, test it, and then we will build the front end. So for a while, we can just forget this folder. Okay, so I'll just say npm install, and just keep this in mind. Whenever you want to install some packages for the backend, you would just run it in the root. So you would not say cd into the backend and then run it. Instead, we would like to just run it in this root folder. And this is the directory when you just open up your terminal. So you can just say npm install, or I for short, and get the express package. We'll be using .env to be able to access our environment variables, and then we can get the course to be able to get rid of the course errors, and I think we can get the helmet as well as the Morgan packages. If you don't know what they do, we'll just see this in action, but basically they are packages for best practices reasons. So I'll explain both of them, I promise. Then we'd like to have, let's say, add neon database / serverless. So this is the package that we'll be using to be able to connect to our Postgres database later in the video. And for rate limiting and bot protection, we'll be using @arcjet / node. Okay, let me just zoom out so that you can see this entire line in a single view. There we go. I'll just press enter now, and it should create a node modules as well as a package log JSON. So let's just see. Hopefully we should be able to get all of them. There we go. I'll just zoom in once again. Now we can go ahead and create a file for the backend. And I will just say server.js. In the package.json, we have this main entry as index.js, but we have called this as server. So we can go ahead, rename this, and we are having this file under the backend folder. So I just update this entry point with this route. And then instead of, let me just save, okay? Instead of typing this syntax where we have express, require express, I would like to use a modern syntax such as import express from express. So instead of this, I would like to use this one. And to be able to make this happen, we should visit package.json file and say type should be module. By default, it is common.js, as you can tell, but we'll be using module so that we can use this import export syntax. Okay, let's save, and we'll go ahead and create a basic application. Let's say const app, call the express function, and I'll just say app.listen on a port such as 3000, and then just say server is running on this port. And to be able to run this file, we could just say, clear up the terminal, we could just say node and find this path, which is under the backend, and then server.js file. But instead of doing this every single time, we should create a script. So let's delete the test one. I will have a development script, and here it says nodemon. We don't have it yet, we'll create it, but let's just say node backend server.js, just like what we have done here. Okay, so instead of every single time running this, we can just say npm run dev, right? It will run this part. Okay, now it says server is running on this port. If you change this and save, nothing happens. We want this to be restarted automatically. And for this, we can use a package. So I'll kill my terminal, clear it. I'll say npm install nodemon, and I'll just put -d, which is going to get us a development package, a dev dependency that we should see here, like we should see it here. There we go. And now let's try to use it. So instead of node, we'll just say nodeman. And let's run this script. So here you can see it says watching any extensions. That is a JavaScript file. So basically, if you go ahead and change this, it should, like I'll just save, it should restart it automatically. And this is why we're using this nodeman package. Okay, let's just actually see this in the output in the UI. So I'll just say app.get. This basically says if we send a GET request to our endpoint, to the root route, this is how we call it. We'd like to just say something like res.send hello from the backend. Okay, let's just try to see this. Localhost, our port was 3000, and there we can see it says hello from the backend. So if you want to have a route like test, we could say hello from the test route. Oops, let's go here and I'll just say /test. There we go. Now it says hello from the test route. If you go into the root route, it says cannot get because we don't really have anything in that route. Okay, so I hope you're getting the basics. This is what we have so far, just a super simple Express application. We're gonna build an API. That's gonna be a little bit later in the video. Let's go ahead and get some packages, such as helmet that we have just imported. And I would like to explain this. This is one of those packages that you would like to have as a best practice, as well as the Morgan package. Okay, so when we hit this test route, let's just console log the response.get headers. So without using helmet, let's just see what we're gonna get in the terminal. I will visit /test. And let's take a look at the terminal. The only header that we have, it says X powered by Express. But if we call the helmet middleware, so middleware is just a function, basically. Let's just say app.use call the helmet. Let's save and send the same request. I just refresh this page. Now we can see we got a bunch of different headers that will allow us to secure our application. So we got XSS protection, permitted cross-domain policies, and a lot of different things. And I would like to add this as a comment. So here I just pasted for your reference. Helmet is a security middleware that helps you protect your application by setting various HTTP headers. So this is one of those packages that you would like to have almost all your applications. And the other package that we're gonna have is the app.use, Morgan. So this is what we have installed already. And we'll just say as the option, we would like to use dev. And basically this will log the requests. Let's just see what I mean. I will visit this route. Let's refresh. Take a look at the terminal. So we just got the request that we just sent, which was a GET request to the route, which is test. And this is the response that we just got, which says not modified. And this is how it took to send a response back. So normally you should assume to get 200 response, but since the response is in the cache, we got 304. If I try to delete the cache, like Control-Shift-R, we should be able to get 200 as you can see, right? And if I try to send one more request, we're gonna get 304. So this basically says your response is coming from the cache. Okay, so we're just learning a lot of different things here, which is really important for you to understand as a beginner. Okay, so we just got our middlewares as well. One of the other middleware that we would like to have is the express.json. This will allow us to parse the incoming data. So when we want to create a product, we would like to send an image, name, and a price. With the help of this, we can extract that JSON data. And finally, we'll add the coarse middleware so that we don't really have any coarse errors in the client. Okay, so with this, we got all of our middlewares and a test route. We are listening on a port. One last thing that I would like to do in this section is to set up the environment variables. So instead of this hard-coded value, you would like to have a .env file. Let's just say port. Let's just use 5001. Okay, so we'll go ahead, create a variable. Let's say const port. And this should all be uppercase. I'll explain why. Let's just say process.env.port. So this should be coming from this file. But if you try to console log it, let's say port, and the reason that we just make this all uppercase, it is because it is a constant, right? Let's save, open up the terminal. It says course is undefined. That's correct. Let's go ahead and import the course. Let's save. Okay, for some reason, we can see the port is undefined. It is because we didn't use this package called .env. We should go ahead and import it. Let's just say actually import .env. This is the usage that you will see most. So .env from .env, and then you would call this config method. If you save, now we can read this file. As we can tell, it is coming from the .env file. Okay, so instead of using this hard-coded value, we'll be using the port, and we can replace this with the port, how do we call it? The port variable. And just in case, if this is undefined for some reason, we can just back it up with a value. And I don't really want to use 5001. I'll be using 3000. Let's just put the exact same value to here. And we can see it should be 3000 that is coming from the console log. And I'll delete the console log at the moment. Okay, let's save. Take a look at the terminal. It says server is running on this port. We don't really have a space. We could give it like this. There we go. So that's gonna be it for the initialization of our application. Next, we can connect to our database, which is gonna be Postgres. So I have just said we'll be connecting to a database, but I think first we should organize our files and folders a little bit. Because now think about it. If we have multiple different routes that are gonna be taking a bunch of different lines, let's say this route will have 20 lines of code. Then we'll have one more route that is around 50 lines of code. Then we'll have another one. So this file will get out of hand, right? Instead of creating everything in this file, we can split this into different files and folders. This is what we're going to be doing. Before we create any different folders, I think we can talk about this idea of API. So let's just say now this application is related to products, right? Let's say we're going to have a route to fetch all the products. But since this is going to be an API, it is a better practice to actually add this API prefix at the beginning. So when we send a request to API products with a GET request, we would like to basically fetch all the products from the database, right? So we'll just say get all products from DB and return it in the response. Okay, it would look something like this, right? Okay, and let's take a look at what is an API in the first place. So it stands for Application Programming Interface, which sounds absolutely complicated, but at the end of the day, it is a pretty simple concept. So API allows two different applications to talk to each other. They are all around us, and we are using it every single day. To give an example, when you send a mobile payment, you're using an API. And here we have an example. Let's say we have a React application and we want to fetch some data from our database. There will be a man in the middle, which is going to be our API. You will say, hey, could you please give us all the products that we have in the database? You will send the GET request. It will go ahead, get the products from the database and send us a response back, right, to the client. And in the same way, we can delete some products, update them, and create them. So all you have to understand is that API allows two different applications to talk to each other. And at the moment, we are in this part where we are trying to build an API so that we can communicate with our database and send a response back to the client. Because later in the video, we will be calling these API endpoints from our React application under the front end. So I hope all this makes sense. And as I said, we cannot put everything into this file. Like technically we could, but this would not be looking any clean. So instead, as I said, we would like to create different folders and files. We're gonna have, let's say, routes folder first, and then we'll have some controllers. So let's go ahead and first handle the routes. I'll just say product route, or let's say product routes.js. We're gonna create, we're gonna import the express, and we're gonna create a router. So I'll just say router express.router and make sure this R is uppercase. Then we'll go ahead, say export default this router and save this file. I know this might look complicated. We'll get into it in a second. Let's delete this part and we'll just say when we use this endpoint, we would like to call the product routes, which is going to be coming from this path. So under the routes folder, under this file, and you should make sure that you have to add this .js at the end. Otherwise, it's going to crash because we're using this type of module. So you always have to have this extension at the end. Okay, so let me try to put them side by side and try to explain what we are doing. So if you visit localhost 5000 /API/products, let's say /test, let's say router.get/test, we would like to call this function where we get the request and response and send test route. Okay, /API/products/test, we're going to call this function. Let's save both of these files and take a look at it. So under the API products and test, there we go. We just got the test route. And I hope this makes sense at this point. You will have a bunch of different routes like this. So the first route we'll have is going to be just slash, where we would like to get all the products. So let's say get all products. And then we'll have another route, which is going to be a post route, where we would like to create a product. And once again, this file will be getting out of hand because we'll have a bunch of different lines of code for each of these endpoints. So instead, we would like to create another folder that is called controllers, and we'll have a file called product controller.js. And we're going to put every single of these functions into it. So this might look a little bit complicated. Let me close everything. Okay, so we have the product routes, and we would like to create a bunch of different controllers for them. So here, I'll just delete those. Let's say the first function that we'll have is going to be called as get all products. Let's save this, and we'll just call it here, get all products, and make sure you put .js at the end. In the same way, we can create a function called create product. Okay, let's go ahead and try to create that function as well. Create product, and let's say these are going to be async functions so that we can call await in it and import this one as well. So later in the video, we will have a delete product function, update product, and get a single product functions. But for now, let's keep it simple and just have only these two functions. One is a get request, the other one is a post request. Okay, let's save this file as well. Later in the video, we will implement the logic for both of these functions. But for now, they will be empty because we don't have a database. We would like to connect to it, create a table, a schema, and then create products. Okay. So this is what we have done in this section. We have added our very first and the only route in this tutorial, which is the /API products route. And we have the get all products route, as well as the create a single product route. And next, we'll like to connect to our database. So for the database, we'll be using Postgres as we talked about it previously. And the provider is going to be Neon, where you can find the link in the description. We'll go ahead and create a free account. And in the pricing page, you can see there is a free plan that we don't really need to pay anything to create up to 10 different projects. So this is the Postgres provider that we'll be using that will allow us to have a Postgres instance in the cloud. So let's go ahead and sign up. I already have an account, so I'll go ahead and log in with my GitHub account. Okay, so we are just in. I have created a bunch of different testing projects, but let's go ahead and create one from scratch. So I'll just say new project, and for the name, I'll just say, I don't know, let's say PERN stack tutorial. And I'll just leave everything as it is. Maybe you can change the region. I don't know if you can change it in the free plan, because currently I am in the paid plan. But just to have the exact same configuration as you have, I'll go ahead and actually shrink this to the very lowest compute size. Okay, let's just say create the project. Now I can go with this one, but just to make you happy, let's go, and assuming you have the free plan, I'll just go with this size. Let's say create the project, and we're going to get a connection string. I'll copy this because we'll be using it just in a second. This string will allow us to connect to this database that we have. And while while we're having this open, I will visit the documentation at the same time. So I'll just say neon.tech/docs, and we're going to take a look at the Node.js SDK in a second. I would like to visit my VS Code, open up the .env, and just paste this, comment this out. We'll be using this for a couple of different environment variables. Now let's take a look at this Node.js quick start. I will click to it. You can read this. Basically, this will give you a walkthrough. They are creating an empty folder, initializing a Node.js application, installing these two different packages, which we already have done this, and now we need to get our Neon credentials. I'll go ahead, copy this, and visit VS Code, paste this in, and they will tell you how you can get the host name, DB name, user, password, and endpoint ID. If you click to this, I believe, so like they would tell you which part is role, which part is the password, what is the host name, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and actually update all of them. So first I'll just put the PG user at the very top, then I'll just put the password, then I would like to have the host, and then the database, and then endpoint. So the user is this part. I will copy this and replace it. And this is the password. So this is going to be your password. Do not use mine because I will delete this before I publish this video. Okay. And do not share your credentials with anyone else. And now the host will be starting from this up until here. So neon.tech, just copy up until there and paste it. And then the database name. So it should be this one, neondb. If you really want to, you can change it, but I'll just leave the default one. And I think we don't really need the endpoint ID. I'll just delete that. Okay. So this is our connection string that we have just extracted a couple of different fields so that we can connect to our database. And while we're in the .env file, I would like to get my other environment variables that we'll be using later in the video, which is going to be for the rate limiting, bot protection, and it is going to be coming from ArcChat. So once again, you can find the link in the description. We'll go ahead and visit the ArcChat website. We'll be signing up with a free plan that we don't really need to pay anything to get started with. And this is the security simplified that we'll have in our application. So they will provide us a bot detection, rate limiting, email validation, attack protection, and data redaction. And it is really beginner friendly that we're going to see. There are a bunch of different SDKs, and there are more coming soon. As you can tell, in this video, we'll be using the Node.js Express SDK. So let's go ahead and sign up. Once again, I already have an account. So I'll go ahead and sign in with my GitHub account. Okay, so this is the test application that I had previously, but we would like to create a new one. So I think if I click to this, like I can create a new team. I'll just say YouTube team, and let's say create, and let's say new site. I would like to just give it a name. I'll just say PERN stack tutorial. You can call this anything. Let's say create. And we're gonna get some environment variables, which is the argchat key. That's the only thing that we would need. Let's copy it. I will paste it into my .env file. And I'll just say argchat underscore key. Paste this in. And we also need argchat environment. This is something that we only need for development. When we deploy our application, we can really just delete this. For now, follow along with me and just add this. Later in the video, we'll actually delete it. And okay, so with this, we just got our environment variables. Later in the video, we'll take a look at the Node.js Express SDK, but that will be a bit later in the video. Okay, so now let's take a look at our Neon console. In the tables section, we don't really have any tables, right? We would like to create a products table, create our schema, just like what we had here. Let me show you this. So we'd like to have our columns where we have an ID, name, price, image, and these two fields. Okay, so let's go ahead, visit the VS Code. We got our environment variables that we'll be using just in a second. I will open up the left-hand side. Let's create a config folder. Inside we'll have db.js, and with the help of this file, we can connect to our database. So first, I'll just say import neon from this path. This is the package that we have installed at the beginning of this project. And I'll say import .env from .env because we'll be accessing some environment variables. Let's call this function, and from the process.env, I would like to destructure a couple of different values. So let's say we will have pg host, and we would like to have pg database, pg user, and pg password. So all these environment variables are coming from here, right? We got 4 different values. And now let me shrink the left-hand side. We'll be using those to be able to create a connection. So I'll just say export const SQL, and I'll just call this neon function. So as we can see, the first argument is the connection string. So we'll go ahead, and I would like to open up this backticks, and let's try to type this out. I'll say Postgres SQL, and we'll put colon 2 forward slashes. Then we'd like to put the pg user, just like what Copilot suggests us. So let's say, pg user, where we'll have the pg password after the colon, and at, then pg host, and then the pg database. So this is the exact same format that you have seen in this connection string. All we have done is update this with the environment variables, right? This part, then this one, so on and so forth. So we can actually copy this and paste it, then compare this. You can see this is the exact same format that we are having, right? Instead of putting it like this into the source code, we are getting it from the environment variables. And at the very end, we can put a question mark and add this SSL mode require. So I'll copy it and paste it. There we go. This is the exact same format that we just have. So let me just put a comment for you. So let's say this creates a SQL connection. Let's say connection using our environment variables. Okay, and this SQL function, so this is a function actually. If you hover over this, you can see this is a function. Let's say this SQL function we export is used as a tagged template literal, which allows us to write SQL queries safely. Okay, I hope that makes sense, and we're gonna see this actually just in a minute. So I'll save, we'll go into the server.js file. We would like to have a function where we can initialize our database. So I'll go ahead and just say async function, obviously, and the name could be anything, but I'll just say initialize database. Then let's just have a try catch block. In the catch, as you can tell, we can just handle the errors. So for now, I'll just say console log error initializing database and console log the error. But in the try, we actually want to create a table called products. So I'll just say await, and here we would like to get this SQL function from this config db.js. And this is this that we called tagged template literal that we'll be using. So I'll just open up my, how do we call them? The template literals, and we'll just put our SQL code into it. Okay, I'll just say create a table called products. But we only want to create this if not exists already. Okay, now we're gonna put our columns into this function call. So we'd like to have the ID field, which will be our primary key that will increment in the serial order. So as you can tell from this image, our ID goes from 1 to 10, right? It is going in the order like 1 by 1. And this is what we call the serial. This is why we are using it. And now in SQL, you can technically write these keywords with smaller characters, the lower characters, but the convention is to have them as all uppercase. So this is why we're doing it. For the keywords, we use uppercase, and for the names or the columns, we use the lowercase characters. Then we'd like to have a name field for each product, and this is going to be type of var char and length of 255, and this cannot be null. So we'll just say not null. Then I'll duplicate this. We will have the price field, and maybe before that we can just say image. I'll go ahead say varchar, the exact same thing. It cannot be null, and I will duplicate this once again. This time this will be the price, and for the price, as you can tell, they can have some decimal points. So it can have 2 different decimal points, right? Let's see how we can make this work. We'll say price, it will be decimal, and the maximum length could be 10 different digits or the same digits, it doesn't matter, but the precision could be 2. Okay, and this cannot be null. Finally, we can add the created underscore at, which will be a timestamp, like timestamp, and by default, it will be the current timestamp. So whenever a product has been created, it will take the that exact timestamp. And we don't need to add the updated at, it will be added by default by Postgres, by the neon. Okay. So with that, we just have our initialize database function. Let's save this file, and we only want to listen to our app if our database has been initialized. So I will cut this out for a second, and I will say initialize database. Once this is ready, then we would like to run a callback function where we are listening to our app, right? So I'll save. Let's take a look at the terminal. So server is running on this port, and I think we can just put a console log here. I'll just say console log database initialized successfully. Okay, let's save. we can see DB initialized and server is running. So if we visit the dashboard, refresh this, we should be able to see a table called products. There we go. Let me just zoom out. We have all the fields such as ID, name, image, price, and created at. And I think I just done a mistake. I told you that we would get the updated at field by default, but looks like we didn't get it, right? It is not really that important, so I will not go ahead and add it. But if you really want to, you can do it. So for now, let's just leave this file as it is. This is what we have done. We got our environment variables for the database, and we have created a DB file under the config, and we have created a connection. By using this connection, which is our template literal, we can basically do anything, any manipulation that we can do to our database. Later in the video, we'll be using this SQL function to be able to read data, create products, delete them, update them, and just do anything that we would like to do. Okay, so with that, that's gonna be it for this section. We have just initialized our database and created our very first table. And next, we can build our controllers so that we can get all the products, create them, delete them, update them, so on and so forth. So with that, I'll see you in the next section. Now we are going to build the controllers. Just before we get into this file, I would like to visit my routes and just add all of them before we get into the functions. So we're going to have one GET request to fetch all the products, and then I would like to have one more GET request to fetch a specific product. So I'll just say GET product. This is the function that we'll create just in a second. And to be able to fetch a specific product, we need to know the ID of that, right? So I'll just say $ID. And by having this in the parameters, we should be able to fetch a specific product. Then we'll have a post method to create a product, and we would like to have a put method so that we can update a product. And once again, if we want to update a specific product, we need to know the ID of it. The same concept applies to the delete method. So let's say delete a specific product, and let's create this function. And instead of calling this as get all products, I think I'll just call it as get products, and this should be good to go. Okay, let's go ahead and create all those functions, and let's update this as well. Let's say export const get product, and I'll just let AI to complete this. Update product and delete product. There we go. Let's save all of them. Import each one by one. Okay, save this file, and I think I'm not running my application, so I'll just go ahead and say npm run dev. There we go. We don't really have any issues, any errors. Everything is working fine. And in the browser, previously we had this test route. Currently it gives us 404, or like, yeah, exactly 404. It says cannot get. And if you visit the /API products, you're going to get this pending state, because in our function, we are not returning anything. So that's why it just keeps in this loading state. But let's go ahead and try to build this function so that we can return all the products that we have in the database. All right, so I'll just go ahead and shrink the left-hand side, and let's try to build these functions one by one. I will have a try catch. In the try, we will say await. Let's import the SQL function that we had. I think my suggestions doesn't work, so I'll go ahead and say import SQL from the config, or I think it was the config db.js. I'll just say from, I think, is this correct? No, we should go one up, I believe. There we go. Okay, so we got the SQL function, and we can put our SQL code into it. So if we want to select everything, we can just say select all from the products. This all stands for all the columns. And let's say order by the created at field in the descending order. There we go. Now we can assign this into a variable called products, and we can just return this as a response. So let's say res.status. Since this is successfully done, we can return 200 status code with the JSON data. Let's just say success of true, and we can return the data as the products. Okay, we can also console log it so that we can just see it. Let's say fetched products. Okay, so we're going to be testing them out, but I think if we visit this at the moment, we can see success of true and data is an empty array because in our database, we don't really have any products. Okay, that means everything is working as expected. Then we can go ahead, test the create product function, but to be able to test it, first we need to build it. Okay, so first we want to get some data that user will send us because they want to create a product. So they would like to send a name, price, and image, which is going to be coming from request.body. And like in the server.js, we have this middleware. That's why we can destructure these values from the request.body. If you don't add this line, so if you delete it, this would be undefined. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so we just got these values. Let's say user didn't send us one of them, right? So let's say if name is undefined, or if price is undefined, or if image is undefined, then we can return a success or false, right? I'll just say return out of this function with a res status of 400, success or false, and the message is all fields are required. Okay, we'll be testing this out just in a couple of minutes, but for now, let's go ahead and keep building the function. So I'll have a try catch. In the try, we would like to create a new product. And did we handle the catch here? No, we didn't. So let's go ahead and test this out or build it. So first, I'll just add a console log for development purposes. And let's say res.status of 500. That means server crashed and success or false and the error message, whatever that is. So here you can even put a custom message like, I think, internal server error. Okay, so in the same way, I'll copy this, put this into the catch, and for the console log, we can just say error in create product function. Let's do it here as well. Okay, now let's try to build the try block. So first I'll just say await SQL, and we'd like to go down. Here we'd like to insert a data, right? So I'll just say insert into the products table with these fields. So we'd like to add a name, price, and image. And here are the values. So I'll just say values and open up this brackets with the $sign of name, price, and image. Notice how it is in the same order what we have above. So first name, then price, and then the image. And now if we want to assign this into a variable, such as, let's say, new product, first we need to say returning of like asterisk. We want to return the inserted value. So now we can just say console log the new product added, and you can console log it. But instead of console logging it only, we would like to return a message back to the client. So we'll say res status of 200 and actually 201, which means a resource has been created. Success of true and the data of new product. So I don't know why, but this new product has been returned as an array. So here you can see it says this is a record and array, right? So here we would like to get the first value. By doing this, this is going to give us the newly created product. Okay, so this is what we are returning back to the client. Just in a couple of minutes, we're going to test this function with a desktop application called Postgres, which is completely free to use. Or there's a free version that we'll be using. I will be also using the free version. I don't really pay for this application. That's going to be a little bit later in the video. just keep this in mind, and I'll just mention this in a couple of minutes. Okay, we have this function as well. We can go ahead and build the next function, which is to get a single product. This is really easy to build. So the first thing we would like to do, just grab the ID from the URL, right? So you can just say request.params and destructure a value from it, which is going to be called as ID. Since we call this as ID, that's why we are destructuring it like this. So if you say IDX, this should be IDX as well. Okay, now let's update this to be ID and try to build the function. So I'll go ahead, create a try catch block. Let's just handle the catch. I'll say console log error in get product function, console log the error, and return an internal server error. Then in the try, we'll just say await SQL. I'll open up the backticks, and we would like to select all from products table, and let's just make this to be uppercase. Let's say products where, right? We would like to have a where clause because we want to fetch a specific product, and we'll say where ID matches with the ID that user sends, right? And we can assign this into a variable called product, and we can just return it as a response. And notice how we are returning it just like what we have done above. So since this is going to be an array, right, we would like to get the first value. It is going to give us the currently selected product. Okay, now let's save. That's going to be it for this function as well. Super easy to do, super easy to build. We just said select all from the products table where this is the ID that user sends. Then we have the update product function. Let's go ahead and build it. So here, once again, we would like to fetch a specific product to be able to update it. So we're going to get the ID from the params, and we would like to get the name, price, and image from the user because they would like to update one of these fields or maybe all of them, right? So we're going to just go ahead, have a try catch. I'll handle the catch. Let's just say error in this function and internal error. In the try, I'll say await SQL, and we'll go inside. I'll just say update something in the products table where we would like to set some columns. The name is going to be coming from the user, right? So this is the column that we have in the database, and this is the new value that user sends. Same for the price, same for the image. And this is the product that we'd like to update. So we just added this where clause. So we're going to go ahead and just say const updated product, assign this, and to be able to have this as a value, we should say returning all, right? We'll just return all the columns of this product. And here we can just add a check. I'll just say if updated product dot length is equal to 0, that means product is not found, right? I'll just return a 404. So instead of typing this out, I'll just paste it, which is around one line of code, right? Res.status of 404 because it is not found. .json, success or false, and the message. After this if check, I'll add a, let's say, basically return the response. So res.status 200, JSON of success true, and then the data. Once again, this is an array, right? So if you hover over this, you can see the TypeScript definition. This is an array. We need to get the first value. Okay, so that's kind of it for the update product function as well. The very last function we have is to delete a product. So maybe you can pause the video, try to build it by yourself. If you can't, you can watch the video because I'll just be showing it. So we're going to get the ID from the request.params because once again, we would like to delete a specific product. We'll have try and catch where we'll have an error in this block. So let me give this space and add the console log, let's say error in delete product function. I am too lazy to type this out, but there we go. We got the response as well. In the try, we would like to delete a product. So I'll go ahead and just say delete something from the products table where the ID field, the ID column matches with what user has sent. And we can just return all the fields, right? All the columns. And we're going to say const delete or deleted product, I should say. This is the value that we have just assigned. And we can say res.status of 200, success of true, and return this as the data. Once again, we can just add a if check if product has been deleted or not with this 404 check, right? So if deleted product has not found, we'll just say return a 404 status with this message. Okay, so that's gonna be it for all the controllers that we have built. So basically this is the CRUD operations that we have just built, which stands for create, read, update, and delete, right? The CRUD operations. There we go, that's gonna be it for this section. Next, we're going to test all these out. So now that we have all these routes and the controllers, let's go ahead and test them out in a desktop application called Postman. So you can install this for free. This is what I have done. Now I'll go ahead and log in. And actually I am already logged in. And I don't really know if you need an account to be able to test this out. But if you need it, just go ahead and create it. Then under the workspaces, I would like to create a new workspace. So let's just call this as, first let's just say next. And I'll just say PERN stack tutorial. This is going to be for like only me. This is the personal workspace that we have just created. Under the collections, I would like to create one called products. So here I'll just say products. And let's add a request. This is going to be a get request. Let's just say get all products. And let's add our endpoint. So it's going to be HTTP localhost our port and /API/products. So if we send a get request, we're going to see we just got a 200 OK status code with the data being null. So let's save. And I would like to duplicate this, but this time, this is going to be a post request so that we can create a product. I'll save. The endpoint is still the same, but we would like to send some body, right? I'll just say row JSON. And what do we want to send? Well, if you take a look at the code that we have to be able to create a product, we want to send a name, price, and image. So let's go ahead and type this out. I'll have this name field. Let's just say headphones. I'll just say premium headphones. Let's say price is gonna be $99. And we can add the decimal point if we really wanted to. And we can finally add the image. So for the image, I'll go ahead and visit the Unsplash. And let's just say headphones. Okay, I'll just copy the image address, then go back here, paste this in as a string. Okay, let's just say send a request. There we go, we got 201, which means a resource created. Success of true, and we got the data. So why do we get it under the data field? Well, this is because how we set it up. So we said we would like to send it under the data object. Now let's take a look at the database. I'll go here, open up my console and refresh. Under the products table, we just got this premium headphones that we have just created, right? I'll just zoom in. We got the name, image, price, and this is the created at date. Okay, so that means our create endpoint is working as expected. I would like to add one more product. Let's say earbuds. Price, let's say it's gonna be $55. For the image, let's go ahead and grab one. Okay, so I'll just copy this, paste it, and let's say send. Once again, we got the resource that we can take a look. I'll just zoom out a little bit actually. Refresh this. Okay, we got the second product. And now let's try to test out different endpoints. So I'll just get the ID of this product, which is 2, because we want to fetch a specific product. I'll just say duplicate. Let's say get a single product. And our endpoint will take an ID, which is going to be 2. Let's just send it. This should send us the product with this ID. There we go, it was the earbuds. So let's save this one. I will go ahead and duplicate this. Let's test out the delete method. So let's say we want to delete this product. I'll add the endpoint. We don't really need to send a body. So like currently you can see here it says post method, but it is actually delete. So if you save this, you can see it will update. Let's say send. Okay, so it looks like it has been deleted and it returns us this data. Let's take a look at the database. We should not have this, right? It is gone. It has been deleted from the database. And finally, let's go ahead and update this product, which has the ID of 1, and I will update the price. Okay, let's go ahead, duplicate this. So first I'll make the method to be put, because this is what we have in our code. So we said this is going to be a put method, and it expects an ID, which was 1. For the body, let's say we want to update the price. You can update multiple fields at once, but I'll just update the price only. Let's say this is going to be 123, like $123, and send the request. Okay, it looks like something failed. So why this is the case? Let's open up the VS Code. Okay, so I think it's because we need to send the other fields as well. So I'll just keep the name as it is, which was, let's see, premium headphones. Can I copy it? Okay. Okay, paste it, and we can add the image as well. So let me copy it from here. Paste it. Now let's say send. We only want to update the price. Okay, there we go. Price has been updated. Let's take a look at the database. Refresh, and new price has been added. So that means all of our endpoints are working as expected. We can create, read, update, and delete our products. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this section. Now, even though we have tested out with the Postman application, later in the video, we're going to test them out from our React application. So here, let me show you the diagram. So we can fetch the products in our React application. We can create one from this model, then we can delete or update. Okay, so we have just tested this out with the Postman. And next, we can add some rate limiting to our application as well as bot protection. So before we write any code, let's take a look at the definition of rate limiting with an example. Then we're going to take a look at the code, how can we implement it. So it sounds complicated, and especially for beginners because they never heard of it or they have never implemented. But it's actually pretty easy to understand and implement with some packages. So rate limiting is a strategy for limiting network traffic. It puts a limit on how often someone can repeat an action within a certain time frame. This is absolutely important, and let's take a look at the example now. Let's say we have a bad user, malicious user, that wants to send 1000 requests per second. Our server would crash in that case, right? We cannot handle that amount of requests per second. So we're going to put a limit, as the name suggests. We're going to say any user can only send 20 requests per minute. So we have just limited the network traffic, right, within a certain time frame. And how can we keep track of a single user or all of them? Well, thanks to IP address. Okay, so with this in mind, let's try to see how can we implement this. And we will not just be adding rate limiting, but also bot detection and something called shield. So let's go ahead and visit our documentation. Let's take a look at the docs specifically for Node.js and Express. Okay, so here are the steps. We have already installed Express, ArcJet, and we have set up our environment variables to get our key, as well as the environment, which stands for development at the moment, because we haven't deployed our application yet. And the reason they have explained this here, since Node.js doesn't set Node-env for you by default, you need to set this ArcJet environment in your development process, right? And this is what we have done. In the deployment, we can delete it. Okay, so let's just see the example what they have in the documentation. So they have put this configuration into the index.js file because this is a simple example. But what I'll be doing is to actually get this added into its own file so that our code is looking a lot more organized. Under the backend, I will create a lib folder so that we can configure third-party libraries in this folder. And the first one that we'll have is arcjet.js. So let's try to build this file. You can take a look at the documentation if you really want to understand what they mean, but I'll try to simplify everything in this one file. So first, we'll just get the arcjet from this package. We're going to get a couple of different things as well. Let's open up this curly braces. I'll get the token bucket and shield, as well as the detect bot. Let me shrink the left hand side, save this file, and we'll get the .env and specifically the config method. So there is two ways of using .env. Either you would use it like this, and you can access to your environment variables under the process.env, or you would say import .env from .env, and then call the .env.config method. So this is what we have used previously, and for now I'll be using this usage. There we go. Now we'll like to initialize arcjet. I'll go ahead, say export const, and I'll just say aj, which stands for arcjet. Let's call our method with the options. So first things first, we'll like to add our key, which is going to be coming from environment variables. Let's just make sure, did we add it? Okay, looks like I have a typo. This should be arcjet key. There we go. Okay, so we just got the key, and as I said, we'd like to keep track of the requests by IP address. We'll just say characteristics, which is a hard word to pronounce, but there we go. We'll say ip.source. And next, we're going to add our rules. So here, this is going to be an array. So the first things first, we would like to add the shield. And the only thing we need to do is just open up this object and just say mode is going to be live. There's also the write run that you can take a look at it from the documentation. This basically only logs the what happened, the rules, but live, just take it to the live mode. And I'll just add a comment. Now shield. So shield protects your application from common attacks such as SQL injection, XSS, and CSRF attacks. If you don't know what they mean, you can do a research, but I'll just leave this comment as it is. Then, as I said, we'd like to implement the detect bot functionality. So I'll just say detect bot, where the mode is going to be live once again, and we would like to block all the bots except the search engine. So search engines are also bots, right? And let's try to add a comma here so that we don't really have any errors. Here we can just say allow and add our array. So I'll just say category is going to be search engine, just like this. And if you want to see the full list, let's just say see the full list I'll get the URL. So you can take a look at the entire list in this URL. Let me just visit. Okay, so it's a giant list that you can take a look and customize it after completing this tutorial. Okay, now the very last thing we would like to add is going to be rate limiting. So here I'll just say rate limiting, and here let's just add bot detection. Probably we don't really need. The name is already pretty self-explanatory. Here for the rate limiting, we'll be using token bucket algorithm. For now, let's type this out. I have a diagram that I'll be explaining it, how that works. So we're gonna understand what that is. But first, let's try to type this out. The mode is gonna be live, as you can imagine. We're gonna have the refill rate. I'll go with 5, and let's say interval, okay, that should be 10. The capacity is going to be 10 as well. Okay, so once again, I promise I'll explain what they do, but first, let's just try to complete our code. So that's kind of it for the ArcChat initialization. Next, we would like to go into the server.js and use it. This is what they do in the documentation if you take a look at it. Okay, so we'll be implementing this part now. So before all of our routes, we would like to just implement our rate limiting, bot detection, etc. So you should put the code above this products route. And here I'll just put a comment. Let's say apply ArcChat rate limit to all routes. Okay. Let's say app.use, we're going to add our middleware, let's say async, we're going to take the request, which stands for rec, res, and oops, let's just say, okay, this is annoying, but let's say next. And you're going to see what this next function does in a second. Now we can have a try catch and try to implement it. I'll say const decision. Let's try to import the ArcChat from this file. There we go. So I'll say arcchat.protect and call this function. Here we'll like to pass the request and an object. So we'll say requested will be 1. And this will specify, let's say specifies. So this specifies that each request consumes 1 token. And once again, I'll explain what that means with that diagram just in a couple of minutes. But first, let's write the code. So we'll say if decision is denied, then we'd like to take a look at the reasons. So there could be 3 different reasons, right? We'll say if decision dot reason is rate limit, we can send a proper response. So for the rate limiting, we have the res status of 429, where the error, let's say, will be too many requests, right? And we can say, please try again. But for now, let's keep this as it is. I will make this to be 1-liner. Okay. But if this is not the case, that means there is an else if case, right? I'll say if decision dot reason is bot, we can handle this specifically. So bot access denied with a 403, and else we can just say forbidden. Okay, I'll just leave this as it is. There we go. We have all of our 3 if checks. And if it is denied, that means we don't really want to do anything else. We just want to return out of this call. And if this is not the case, we can just call the next function, right? So we can go ahead and just say, call the next function, which will be our product routes. They can hit any of these routes if they wish, right? And we can add one more check before the next function. I'll say check for spoofed bots. So If you don't know what spoofed bots mean, so it is when a bot tries to act like if it is not a bot, right? So they are trying to cheat you. And this is the if check that we can do to check if a spoofed bot detected. So we say decision.results, and if any of those results is equal to a bot, and specifically if it is spoofed, then we're going to return this response. And in the catch, let's just say console log argget error. We can console log the error, and we can call the next function with the error message as it is. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Now we need to talk about this diagram where we have this token bucket algorithm. So we have a couple of different fields, such as refill rate of 5, interval of 10, which stands for 10 seconds, and capacity of 10 tokens. So let me just type this out. We'll have 10 tokens at maximum. We will have 10 seconds. So each 10 second mean a interval, and refill rate is how many tokens we're gonna get. Okay, so we just said requested is gonna be 1, that I have added a comment that says this specifies that each request consumes 1 token, and our capacity is 10. So initially we have 10 tokens, and this is what we have. At the 0 second we have 10 seconds. In the first second we make 3 requests. So that means our first 3 tokens are gone. We are left 7 tokens. In the second second, we make 3 requests. So we got 1, 2, 3. Now we just left 4 tokens. And in the third second, we make 4 requests. So that means we just lost all the tokens that we have. And if we try to make a new request, since we don't really have any tokens, we will be rate limited. And I hope this makes sense. So once you got no tokens in your bucket, you'll be rate limited. And after our interval has completed, which is about 10 seconds, we are going to get 5 refill. So 5 new tokens, because this is our rate. And let's say if we are in the 20th second, let's say 20th second, we're going to get 5 more tokens, and that means our capacity is completed, which is 10 tokens. So I hope this makes sense. Pause the video or try to watch this again. This is how we can check for the rate limiting with this token bucket algorithm. And this is really important to understand. There are a couple of different algorithms as well if you want to use it, such as sliding window that you can take a look. This is also pretty popular to understand, and it's actually pretty fun to use. I'll just leave this as an assignment for you if you want to practice it. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this file. Now, unfortunately, we cannot test this out with Postman at the moment. Later in the video, when we are in the front end part, we will try to actually test this out from the home page. So we're gonna just refresh this page multiple times in a second, and we're gonna get an error that says you are rate limited. Okay, so that's gonna be a little bit. And next we're gonna start with the front end application. So let's go ahead and create a React application under the front end folder. So I'll just open up my terminal and cd into I'll say npm create vite at latest, and I would like to initialize it under the current folder, which is front end. So I'll just put that at the end. We would like to go with React and JavaScript. I would like to use JavaScript just to keep this as beginner friendly as possible. If you want to use a TypeScript, you can go with it, but I'll go with the JavaScript. Now we got all the files and folders, and it tells us to run npm install. So I'll say npm install, or npm I for short. Once we got all the dependencies, we can run our application with npm run dev. So let's wait for this to complete. There we go. I'll clear up my terminal, and then I'll just say npm run dev. And we can visit localhost 5173. This is the default port Vite gives you. And there we go, we just have a boilerplate React application. So first, I would like to clear up everything that I don't really want, such as the app.css file. We don't really need it. We don't need the assets. And I can simply delete everything in this file. And let's just say we want to return a div with an h1 that says, hey. Okay. So this is what we just got. On top of this, I would like to use TailwindCSS. So I'll just say Tailwind and Vite. Now currently, Tailwind CSS 4 has just been released, but most people, including me, is still using v3. And this is what we'll be doing in this tutorial. This is not an old version, right? Even though we got 4 just now, this is completely fine to use. And currently, this is what everyone has been using. Maybe we can do a Tailwind 4 course later later at some point. But in this video, we'll be going with version 3. So you can say get started with a framework guide, which is going to be Vite. And we would like to get the dependencies. So we already have a Vite project, so we can skip this section. We're going to go ahead, copy this, kill our terminal, and paste this in. So this will install Tailwind CSS version 3, PostCSS auto prefixer, and it will create a Tailwind config.js file where we would like to update the content. So I'll copy this from the documentation, paste this in, and finally we would like to update the index.css file. I'll copy it and delete everything that we have, paste this in. Now our application should have Tailwind CSS working. So you can say class name, text, red of 500. And if you are not able to get this auto suggestion, you should install an extension called Tailwind IntelliSense. So it should be this one. This is what I'm using. And also I am using a different package. Let's say ES7. Okay, I'll be using this a lot in this video, which allows me to get, let me just cut this. So if I type RFCE, I can get this auto-completed code. So this is the snippet that this extension gives me. So you would like to install it if you really wanted to. Okay, now let's save and start our front-end application. Let's say npm run dev. We can take a look at the end result. There we go. This is the Tailwind class that has just been applied. On top of Tailwind, I would like to install Daisy UI. So if you don't know, it is the component library that is built on top of Tailwind. Just to give you an example, let's say you want to get a button that would look like this. For this, you need to write all these CSS classes. But if you use Daisy UI, you can get the exact same button with just this class, button and button primary, right? And to give you another example, if you want to get this output, you need to write this much of classes. But if you use Daisy UI, this is what you need to type just to get the exact same output. And they have a bunch of different themes, and actually we'll be using some of them. So here we can see, but let's just scroll to the top and see how we can use it. Okay, so once again, we are using the version 4. At the moment, I mean, while you're watching this video, the Daisy UI version 5 might be out. Make sure you selected the version 4. Okay, we're gonna copy this, open up our terminal, maybe kill this, paste this in. And in our Tailwind config, we would like to require Daisy UI as a plugin. So they're using require syntax, but I'll be using import syntax. Let's go into the Tailwind config. Since we're using import export, here we can just put it like this, which has been imported from Daisy UI. So if we want to have multiple themes, just like what they have, we need to update something in this file. So go ahead and visit the source code, find this file, which is tailwindconfig.js, and copy this Daisy UI object below the plugins. So from the Daisy UI, we would like to get a couple of different themes, and these are the ones that we'll be using in this project. Okay, so once you have done this, we should be able to get started with the app.jsx file. I would like to install a couple of different packages as well. So let's say npm install, and I will shrink the left hand side. So I will get React hot toast, which is the notification library that we'll be using to show beautiful notifications. Then we'll be using React router DOM, which will allow us to have the navigation in place. So we can have links, we can have different pages. We'll be installing Axios, and we'll be using this to fetch data and just send requests. So this is the replacement for Fetch API. This is a lot more convenient. Okay, so we got the Axios. Let me take a look at my notes. We're going to be getting the Zustand package, which is going to be used for global state. And as we use them, I'll try to explain each. Finally, we'll have lucid-react. This is the package that we'll be using for icons. Okay, so let's run this. Hopefully, it should be installed, and we can start with the app.jsx file. So first, let's go ahead, create two different folders, one for components and one for the pages. We will have one page. Let's make this file called homepage.jsx, and I'll say rfce to get this code. Save and close. Same for this one, we'll say product page.jsx, and save this file. We should be good to go. For the components, let's say we will have navbar.jsx. Later in the video, we'll update the content, but for now, let's leave it as it is. And we're going to go into the app.jsx. We would like to add a div. Let's delete this h1. We will say class name is going to be minimum height of screen. We would like to have a background base of 200, which is coming from Daisy UI. Let's say transition the colors. And we would like to have duration of 300 milliseconds. Then we would like to have the navbar component. So for some reason, I cannot get the auto suggestion. So I'll just go ahead and say import navbar from, I think, from the components, navbar.jsx, or just navbar file. And we can add our routes. So we're going to have two different routes in this application, one for the home page and the other one for the product page. So we need to import the route as well as the routes. Let's get it manually from React Router DOM. So our first route is going to be the home page. This is our path, and the element we would like to show is going to be the home page itself, which we have created. It is this one. So let's try to import it from the pages folder. And the other one is going to be for the products. So let's say route, and our path is going to be /product/ a dynamic ID. And for the element, we would like to show the product page. Let's go ahead and import it as well. So we got our component imports, page imports, as well as the package imports. Okay, since we want to see the navbar in every single page, we didn't put it in the routes, but outside of the routes, right? And let's save. Now this is not going to work, because if we want to use routes or route from the React Router DOM, or basically anything, we would like to visit main.jsx and wrap our entire application with browser router component. Okay, import it, and now in our entire application, we can use anything, any component coming from React Router DOM. Okay, so specifically, we didn't need to visit the main.jsx. If you want to, we can delete this from here and add it to here, basically. You can just say browser router, right? The point here I'm trying to make is you need to wrap your entire application with this browser router. And in my opinion, the best place is to put it is this main.jsx file, so that we can just abstract it from this file. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Now let's open up our terminal and just say npm run dev and test out our pages. Okay, let's close everything. This is what we have in the homepage. We can see the navbar and then the homepage content. Let's visit the product page. I'll say product and just put some ID. There we go. Still, we have the navbar and we can see the product page content. So that's gonna be it for the initialization of the front-end application. Next, we can start with the functionalities. Now let's start with the navbar component, which is going to look like this. So we're gonna have the logo on the left-hand side with a border bottom at the bottom, and on the right-hand side, we'll see the theme selector as well as an icon. So here, when we click to this theme selector, we would like to see this drop down where we can select our themes. And this icon, we only want to see it in the homepage. That indicates how many products that we have in our store. In this example, we have 8 different products. And in the product page, we don't really want to see that icon. So with this in mind, let's go ahead and try to build this component, which is going to be the navbar. Okay, so I'll just shrink the left-hand side, delete this text inside. Let's give some classes. I'll say bg base of 100, and let's change the opacity, which is going to be 80. Then we'll say backdrop blur of large, let's say. Then you'd like to have a border of bottom, which is equal to 1 pixel, and we'll say border base content of an opacity. Then we'd like to say it will be sticky to the top 0 and z index of 50. Okay, so this is the entire class list that we will have in the first div. Then we would like to have one more div with some classes. Let's say maximum width of 7x large, which is equal to 1280 pixels. And let's center this out with margin x auto. One last parent div. This is going to be the wrapper for the navbar class. And here we can see this navbar is coming from Daisy UI. So they have already implemented these classes for you. So we can say padding x of 4, minimum height, let's say it's going to be 4 rem. But if you want to put 4 rem, you need to open up this brackets and type this out. This 4 is not equal to 4 rem. It is 4 units. And if you say 4 rem, it's equal to 64 pixels. Okay, so if you just put 4, it is 16 pixels, which is equal to 1 rem. I hope that makes sense. Now let's say justify between. Then we would like to put the logo on the left-hand side. So if you really want to, we can type this out, but just to speed this up a little bit, I'll copy it from the source code from the navbar.jsx file. You can do the same thing if you want to copy and paste. So you can just get this below to this comment. So we have a link that is coming from React Router DOM. When we click to it, it will take us to the homepage. And we have this icon, which is going to be coming from Lucid React. We'll say import shopping cart icon from Lucid React. Okay, and you can see like we're using some classes like font mono. This is for the font family. We have tracking widest, which is for letter spacing, text size, and background clip text, so on and so forth. So this is not a UI course. That's why I might skip the classes a little bit. I'll leave this as a challenge for you where you want to pause the video and take a look at the classes. But let's save, take a look at the output. I'll just zoom out a little bit. There we go. This is what we can see. In your case, the color might be a little bit different. It's because it might have a different theme. So if you visit app.jsx and say data theme is gonna be, let's say, forest. This is one of those themes that we have in this file. So okay, you can use any of these themes in this data theme field. Save this, and now we're gonna have this forest theme. If in your case this does not work, you can go ahead, kill your application and restart it again. Hopefully it should work. Okay, so by using this background gradient to right from primary color to the secondary, we can have this kind of feeling. I'm not sure if you can see it from the video, but the color changes from left to right. Okay, so that's the logo that we have just created. On the right hand side, we would like to have these two components. So after the logo, after this div, I'll go ahead and add a comment. I'll just say right section. And let's say we'll have a div with a class name of flex, items centered, and gap of 4. Inside this div, I will have a component called theme selector. We will build it just in a second. For now, let's have this maybe as a p tag, like this. And after this, we're gonna have a check. So as I said, we would like to only show this if we are in the home page. So how can we check for this? Well, we have a hook called use resolved path coming from Lucid React. And from this, we can destructure the path name. And we can just say const is homepage. This will be true if path name is equal to home, right? If it is only /, that means we are in the home page. Okay, so here I'll say if it is home page, we would like to render this part where we'll have a div. Let's say div. I don't know why this does not complete, but class name of indicator that we will have, you can hover over this. This is coming from this is coming from Daisy UI. Then inside this div, we will have some code that I would like to copy and paste. So we'll have shopping bag icon, and for the product's length, let's just put 8 for now. Okay, so we have indicator, heading of 2, rounded full, hover state, transition colors for the animation, an icon with the number of products. Let's save and take a look at the output. There we go, this is what we just got. If we visit the product page, we cannot see that component because this run and we realize we are not in the home page. Okay, now we can build the theme selector component. I'll say theme selector and self-close this. Let's try to create this under the components. I'll say .jsx, get rfce, and import it. Okay, so it is looking exactly as it was before, but now we are trying to build the functionality on top of it. So first, I'll just say class name, where we can say drop down coming from this UI and drop down end. And we're gonna go ahead, have a comment that says drop down trigger, which is gonna be the button. When we click to it, it would open up the drop down. So let's say button, this should have a tab index of 0 with some classes. Let's say button, btn ghost, and let's say button would be circle. And I'll say we'd like to have a palette icon that is going to have class name of width 5, height of 5. And if you want to have a tip, you can just delete this as a size 5. If the width and height is equal, so you can just have it as a size. In this case, I'd like to go with 5. Okay, this is the button that we have. Then we'll have one more div, again with the tab index, so that it is matching and it is working as expected. This is coming from this UI. We'll have some classes. Let's say drop down content, margin top of 2, padding of 1. Let's give some box shadow, let's say 2x large, BG base of 200, backdrop blur of large. I'll go ahead and auto accept this. Rounded of, let's say 2x large as well. We can give a little bit space. and width of 56. It should be inside 56, which stands for 224 pixels. Let's give a border base of content and change the opacity. Okay, now here inside we would like to have a bunch of different themes, right? So in this example, you can see we are mapping through, I think, 13 different themes, and we show the name as well as some indicators. So for this, I have already prepared a file for you. We're gonna go under the source, create a folder called constants, and here I'll just create an index.js file. You can find this from the source code, which is going to be in the description. I'll copy this and just paste it. Okay, so we have an array of themes, which has a couple of different objects, and each object has a name, label, and the indicator colors. So save it. We'll be using it in this theme selector component. So I'll go ahead and just say import the themes. For some reason, I cannot get the auto suggestion, so let's do it manually. This is coming from the constants. If the file name is equal to index, you don't really need to put this, right? So that's why this should still work. We'll say themes.map. We're gonna get each theme option, and we're gonna return something. So let's say for each theme option, we'd like to return a button component. And each button will have a key. First, let's put this so that React is happy with us. We'll say theme option.name. Since this is unique, we can use this for the key. And we'll add a class name. So this is going to be looking a little bit dynamic. So I'll just put the backticks. And currently, let's create a variable. This is going to be hard-coded. Let's say our current theme is going to be cupcake. Okay. Or actually, we're using the forest, so let's keep this as forest, right? This is what we have. So let's say current theme is equal to forest. And here for the classes, I'll just say width is going to be full, padding x of 4, y of 3, rounded of x large. Okay, so it is really boring to type all these classes, but I know if I copy and paste, some people will get mad at me. So I just had to type this out, I think, at this point. So we got the transition colors, etc., so on and so forth. Now I would like to add this money sign because we'll have some dynamic stuff here. So we'll say if the current theme is equal to the theme option.name that we are just mapping through. In this case, I would like to change the background color. So let's say primary of 10 and text primary. In the else case, we can change the hover state. So I'll just show you an image what I mean. Let's say base of content, and let's just say 5 opacity. Okay, so what are we doing here? If the currently selected theme is this one, the background color will change as well as the text color. So this is exactly what we have done. And now we can put this label as well as the icon, and on the right hand side we'll put the indicators. Okay, so inside this button I will have the palette icon with the size of 4. So we already imported this, and in the span we're gonna put the label. Text will be small and font would be bold, right? Font weight of medium. And now I would like to show the theme preview colors. So I'll say theme preview colors, which are going to be those indicators. So I'll say div, let's say class name of ml auto, flex and gap of 1. We would like to visit the theme option colors, because if you take a look at this array, colors is an array of strings, right? And we would like to just display them. So what I'll be doing is to actually paste this in. For each color, we're going to show a span with the background color that is coming from as this color, like from the array. Okay, hopefully that's kind of it for this component for the UI. let's see, if I click to this, I can see the list. And since currently we are in the forest theme, this is this is highlighted. If you click to any of them, nothing happens because we don't really have the functionality yet. So I think you can already say why this is not working by taking a look at this code, because we are having this theme as hard-coded. And when we click to this button, nothing happens. So we should have an on-click function, right? We're going to just build it in a second. But first, let's go ahead and create a store. So what does that mean? Let's go under the front end, under the source. I will create a store folder, and the first store that we would like to create is going to be use theme store.js. Okay, so we have installed a package called Zustand, right? And we'll be using this to create some global state. Now, what does that mean? So when we use something like use state, let's say use state, I'll delete this just in a second. This is only for testing purposes. So let's say we have theme, set theme, and by default we have the forest, right? So this is a state that is used locally in this file. If we want to send this state to the navbar, we should send it with a prop. So let's say we would say theme and send the theme, then we should visit the navbar, get the theme, and let's say if we want to send this theme to the theme selector, we should go ahead, send the theme, so on and so forth, right? We would go here, grab it. It is really boring and not scalable. So we don't really want to do this. We don't really want to drill this in multiple levels. Instead, we can create it in a file and just use it in any place that we want. So I know this sounds complicated if you have never used it, but you're going to see how cool it is. So I'll just shrink the left-hand side. Let's import the create function from Zustand. We're going to build it, and I hope you're going to see how that works and the benefit of it. So import from Zustand, we'll say export const use theme store. We're going to call the create function, which takes a callback function, and this would take an argument called set. It also takes get. We're not going to be using the getter in this one, but we'll be using the setter. So we'll have a theme, and let's say this is going to be equal to forest. Okay, then we're going to have the setter function. So it's going to be the set theme. So this is exactly using use state, just like what we have done. We had the theme and set theme, and this is what we have just done here as well, right? And instead of having this as a function call, I will cut it and wrap it with brackets so that we are returning an object. So I just paste that in. Okay, now if we want to use this theme in this component, we can basically go ahead and just say use theme store, call this, and grab this value, which is called theme. And we can get the set theme method as well. And I have a typo. I think this should be use theme store, just like this. And let's import this one. Okay, so now we can really just console log this theme, and if you want to use this in any other components, you would do the exact same thing. Just copy this line and put it in any place that you wish, right? Import the hook, it is working. You don't really need to send this as a prop to this one, then from here to this one, you would just go here and get it. So that's the benefit, the main benefit that we are giving a shit, right? Okay, so now let's go into, maybe let's delete those. We don't really need them in this file. Okay, so instead of having this as a hard-coded value, we would like to actually grab it from the theme store. So let's say theme store, we're going to get the theme. And we have this setter function that is going to take a theme that user will pass, and it will set the current theme with it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now we're going to go into this theme selector component, and in this button, we will add an onClick function. So I'll just say onClick. We're going to call a function, we'll say set theme, and we would like to send the theme option dot name. And I believe this onClick should be here in this one. Okay, so we're mapping through our themes, showing a button for each of them. And when we click to any of them, we're going to call the setter function with the theme option name so that it would update the state. Now let's go ahead and just say console log the theme, and we're going to see if it would update. I will save this file as well. Open up the console. Okay, so we have the forest by default. I'll click to the coffee. There we go, it has just been updated because we call the setter function on click. We can get the aqua, let's say. There we go. When you click to that button, it is calling this method with the option which would update the global state, and we are console logging it. So I have explained this in a very long way, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands it. Okay, so instead of just having this value as hard-coded, we actually want to grab it from the local storage because we want to save it so that if user leaves our application and come back, they can see it, whatever they said previously. So we'll just say get item, and I would like to call this as preferred theme. This is going to be the key. And let's say if user don't have any value in the local storage, by default, we're going to be using the forest because why not? This looks pretty cool. And before we calling this, we're going to say local storage dot set item with the theme that user just selected and update the global state. Okay, now let's save and once again test this out from the application. Local storage. So currently this is coffee. Let's just say cyberpunk. It has been updated. Oh, actually this was something else. So I'll just delete it. Previously we didn't had anything, but we have just set this up. Okay, whatever I click, it just updated. Okay, but now nothing changes in the UI, right? Because in the app.jsx, data theme is always forest. We actually want this to be dynamic. Whatever we have in the global state, it should update it. So I'll say use theme store. We're going to get the current theme and replace this with it. Okay, now I'll go ahead, select this one. There we can see everything is working as expected without any issues. And I think in this tutorial, mostly I'll be using this one because I really liked it. This one also looks fine, but I'll go with this one. Okay. So this is what we have just done. We have set it up Zustand, where we have created a theme store that we can just get our state globally easily, right? All we have to do, call a hook and destructure the values that we would like to use, which can be either a value or a function, right? And by default, we're using the forest, but otherwise it would be coming from the local storage. And we are saving it as well as updating the state. We are using the same hook in this component. And I think in the navbar, we are not using it because we don't really need it. Okay, so that's kind of it for the navbar and theme selector. I think I can see you in the next section. Now let's visit the homepage component where we would like to fetch the products that we have in the database. So for now, we're going to ignore this button and just try to fetch this data and see the products so that we can just render them. So for this, instead of fetching it in this homepage, I will create a store. Let's say use product store.js, and you're going to see this will be a lot more comfortable than fetching the data inside the components. So I'll say import create. So once again, if you want to, you can pause the video and try to build it by yourself, just a simple store with the Zustand. And in my case, AI has got my back. So here we have just an object that we would like to return from this hook. And we got the setter function. Let's import the getter as well. We'll be using it in this file. And I'll explain what this does. Okay, so first things first, we would like to have some state for the product. We'll just say products state. We're going to get the products, which is going to be an array, an empty array initially. Once we fetch the products, we would like to update this with it. And we're going to have a loading state. Initially, this could be true, or we can go with false, however you wish, because we're going to update this. And we can have an error state. Let's say initially it will be null. And we can start with the fetch products function, which will be an async function. And previously we have imported Axios, right? So I'll just say import Axios from Axios package. And I'll be using a base URL. So I'll say const, let's give a space. And this base underscore URL is going to be equal to localhost 3000. So you're going to see why we are creating it just in a second. Let's say first things first, we would like to set our loading state to be true because we are trying to fetch some data, and we'll have try and catch blocks. In the catch, we can just say, okay, maybe we'll just came back to it later. Let's say finally, either we succeeded or either we failed. We would like to just set the loading state to be false. And in the try, we would like to send a GET request with the help of Axios to our base URL /API/products. So instead of every single time going ahead and typing this out, we have created a variable that we'll be using just like this. So if you want to update it in one place, that would be here, right? Okay, so this is going to give us a response. Let's say const response, and we can update our state with it. So I'll say set products, which is our array, with response.data once again, because in our controller, when we want to get the products, we are returning it under the data field. And one, like the first data, is coming from the Axios, the other one from our API. Okay, and I'll just say error is going to be null, because that means, like, if we are in the try block, that means we don't really have any errors, but else if we got some errors, we're going to hit the catch block. I'll just rename this to be ERR. This is just the convention that I'd like to use. Let's say if the error.status is equal to 429, which means rate limiting, right? We'll just say set error could be rate limit exceeded or too many requests. But in the else case, we can just say something went wrong or something similar. Okay, so let's save this. This is the file that we have just created. We have a function that we can call to be able to fetch the products that is going to update the products state. And we can go into the home page. Now try to create or try to call that function, I should say. So from the use product store, we're going to get a couple of different states, such as the products, the loading state, the error state, as well as the fetch products function. And we would like to call this function with a use effect. Okay, let's just say fetch products and call this function. So why this is not happy with us, because we should put a comma, and here this warns you, it says you should put this into the dependency array. So let's go ahead and add it. We can console log the products. Let's take a look at the output. I'll refresh the home page. So we have an empty array, and let's refresh once again. Looks like we're getting error connection refused. It's because I am not running the server. Okay, so I'll just go ahead, say npm run dev. Server started. Let's go ahead, refresh this. Now initially it was an empty array, but now we can fetch the products, which we only have one in the database. Okay, now that we have fetched it, we can display it. Just like this, we're gonna have 3 columns in the grid view, and we're gonna make it to be responsive. So here in the return statement, I'll have a main tag. Say class name is gonna be container mx of auto. Let's say padding x of 4, y of 8, maximum width of 6x large. Okay, and I think if we have the maximum width of 6x large, we can basically delete the container because this is what it is updating. Yeah, I think I'll just delete the container and have this class. Okay. Inside the main, I'll have a div, and this will have some classes like flex, justify between, item centered, margin bottom of 8. Then we'll have a button, which is going to be class name of btn primary. Okay, so this will have an onClick function. That's going to be a little bit later in the video. But for now, let's just say plus circle icon. I can copy it and paste it. Let's import it. Size of 5, margin right of 2. And here we'll just say add a product. And the functionality of this will be a little bit later in the video. And we can have a fetch. Okay, so refetch button. Let's try to build it. Basically, this is a button. When you click to it, it calls this function once again. Okay, let's save, take a look at the output, what we're gonna get. This is what we have. And let's try to build the actual UI to render the products. So first, I'll just say if we have an error, I would like to show an error indicator. These classes are coming from Daisy UI. And if we are in the loading state, we're gonna show something else, such as a loader component. So I'll just say if loading is true, we would like to render this part, else we would like to render this part. If it is loading, we're going to see this loading spinner, but else we can have a div with the grid class name. So in the larger screens and above, we will have 3 columns, medium screens and above, 2 columns, and below to the medium screens, we'll just have 1 column. So this is how we can make it to be responsive. And we're gonna map through the products. So let's say get the each product. And for each, we would like to return a component called product card. And this is a component that we would like to create now. We just added a key so that React is happy with us, and we are sending the product as a prop. So let's go ahead, save this file, and try to create this component. I'll say rfce, import it in this file, and let's get the prop, which is going to be the product. I think this will be unhappy with us even if we console log it. So here it says you should add the prop types. And this is a warning coming from ESLint. So I'll copy this name, visit the ESLint config.js that is under the front end, and scroll below to the rules. So still inside the rules, I'll just paste this in as a string, and I'll just say turn this off. Now we just got rid of that error. Okay, so this is how we can get rid of the how did we call it? The prop types errors. If you delete that console log, it says you're not using it, but if you call this variable, you're not going to get that error. Okay, let's try to build this component, which is going to be only related to UI. So let's say class name of card. And if I copy the classes, would you be mad? Well, I don't really think so, because this has nothing to do with logic. Let's just speed this process a little bit. We have already coded too much, right? So we display the product image with an image component where we have these classes that you can take a look, and we are getting the image field as the source. After this figure, I'll have a div with the card class, and I think this should be card-body. Inside, I will have the product info, such as the name, as well as the price. Okay, so still inside this div, below to the product info, I would like to have some card actions, which are going to be these buttons. So we have just added the info. We would like to add these two. Let's go back and try to add those. I'll just have a div with some classes that is called as card actions, justify end, and margin top of 4. I will have a link. So this is for the edit button. When you click to this, it would take you to the product page. Okay. And this is a page that we're going to build a little bit later in the video. So let's import the link as well as the edit icon. So these are the imports. And when you click to a link, it would take you to the product page and it would put the ID into the URL. After this link, we'd like to have a button. Let's say the class name is going to be btn small, btn error, so that it is in the so how do we call it, the red color, and btn outline. Okay, inside we'll have this trash icon with the size of 4. Let's save. Hopefully this should be working out as expected. Okay, this is what we have in the database. If we click to it, we can go into the product page, and if we click to this, nothing will happen because we don't have the delete functionality. But when you refresh, we have that loading spinner for a second. We can refresh it from here as well. And let's try to do it multiple times. So I was expecting to get a rate limit exceeded error, which we got. And for some reason, we can still get the data. This should not be the case. Are we missing anything? So here, when we set the error to be null, we can set the products to be null as well. So here I'll just say the products should be an empty array. Same for this one. Okay, let's try to do it once again. I'll just try to do it multiple times until we exceed. There we go. Now we cannot fetch any products because rate limit has been exceeded. Now you might ask, even though we got rate limited, if we don't add this line, we can still see it. Well, it's because that data was in this state. It is not actually coming from the backend. And I hope that makes sense. And with that, that's gonna be it for the fetch products functionality. So this is where we left. Now let's go ahead and try to add a function so that we can delete a product. So I'll go ahead and just say delete a product. This is going to be an async function. Say async, this is going to take the product ID so that we know which product that we are trying to delete. So first I'll just say await axios.delete, and maybe first I should update the loading state. So I'll just cut this, say try and catch. Before we try to do anything, let's just say loading state should be true. And in the try, we'll say await axios.delete. We're going to use the base URL /API/products and then the product ID, which is we are getting as a prop or the argument. Then once we have deleted it, we can just remove it from the state. So we're going to filter this out and we'll say set. First, let's call the previous state. We'll just say previous, and we'll like to return a state where we'll say products should be filtered out. Okay. So in the catch, let's say console log, maybe error deleting the product. And in the catch, I think we can show a toast. So I think I haven't shown you how a toast would look like. And by the way, if you have a rate limit exceeded, after some time, it should reset, right? So if you try to refresh it, you should get the data. Hopefully, there we go. So I was talking about the React hot toast. Okay, so let's just say make me a toast. It is these beautiful notifications. This is the success, and we can have a error toast as well. And to be able to use this, we should install the package, which we have already done, and we should add this toaster into our component or into our application. So we can put it in any place, but I'll put it in the app.jsx. So I'll just say import the toaster and just self-close it. We'll say toaster from React Hot Toast. And if we got an error, we can just say toast.error and make sure you import the toast from React Hot Toast. We can just say something went wrong. And finally, we can update the loading state to be false. And in the try, we can show a success toast as well. So we'll say product deleted successfully. Okay, so we are not using this yet. So we have an error, but we'll fix it later in the video. When we click to this trash icon button, let's say on click, we would like to call a function. Let's get it from the theme store. That is going to be delete product. So on click, we're going to call this function with the product ID. Okay, I'll save, format this, and let's try to delete a product. I'll click it. Looks like nothing has happened. Let me refresh and try to click to this once again. Okay, for some reason it did not work. On click, we call the delete product. Do we have a typo? Delete product. So let's just say console log delete product function called. Open up the terminal and just see. I'll refresh. Click to it. Okay, delete product is not a function. Let's see. Delete product. Do I have a typo? Okay, it should not be coming from the theme store. It should be use product store. My bad. Let's save. Now we should be able to delete it. I'll just click it. There we go. We got the loading state for a second. This function has been called and we even see the success toast. If we refresh, we should not have any products in the database. Okay, so with that, that's gonna be it for the delete product function. Next, we can build the add product functionality. And just before we add this functionality, I think it would be better if we show a UI that says no products found at this moment, because currently we don't really have anything in the database. Instead of seeing this empty UI, it would be better if we visit the homepage and try to add this code after the error check. So I'll just paste it, which is around 10 lines of code, where we say if there is no products and if we are not in the loading state, show a package icon coming from Lucid React with a message. So let's save, take a look at the UI. Okay, this looks a lot more better than what we had previously. And this should be working out fine with all the themes that we have. And there is one more thing, which is this border color in the Navbar component. Let's open up the Navbar. Instead of this base content, it should be content. I was just missing this T. Let's save. Now the border color is matching with all the themes that we have. Okay, so with that, that's gonna be it for this section. So now when we click to this button, we would like to see this kind of a model where we can add a product name, price, and image. And when we submit it, it will be saved to our database and it will update the UI. So let's go ahead and try to build it. The functionality will go here into the product store. So we are going to have some states. Let's just say form data, and maybe I can put a comment here. Let's say form state. and above we have the products state. So form data will be an object with a name field. Initially, it'll be an empty string. We're gonna have a price field, and same thing for the image. Okay, so that's the form state. Now we're gonna need a function to be able to add a product. Let's say add product. This is gonna be an async function, and we're gonna take the event, let's say, because this will be the form submission, and we would like to just prevent the default first. So let's say e.prevent default. And next we're going to build the functionality just in a second. And I would like to have a couple of different functions that will help me to update the form state. So I'll just say set form data. This is the setter function where we will take some form data and update our state with it. So I'll just say set the form data with whatever user passes. And one more function called reset form, and we can just basically reset the form. So this will be a helper function that we're going to be using in a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's try to build this function now called add product. So before we do anything else, I'd like to just say set loading state to be true. Then we will have try and catch. And here in the try, and maybe let's just add the finally as well. So I'll just say finally loading state will be false. Now in the try, I would like to just get the form data that we have. So this is a state. How can we get it from a function, right? Inside of a function. So that's where this get method comes into play. So I'll just say get, call this, and from here we can just destructure anything that we wish, such as form data. There we go. And you can get other things such as the loading state, right? Anything that we have above. So we just got the form data. We would like to send a method, let's just say, a request, axios.post to our base URL /API/products. And we're going to send the form data as the body. So this will take some time. That's why we are awaiting this. And then once it is posted, we can just refetch the data, right? So I'll just say await, call the get function, the getter, because from here we will call this fetch products function that we have. So it would update the UI immediately, right? If you really wanted to, you can update the form data instead of calling this, but this is what I'll be going with. And then we can just say get reset form because we have just added a new product, and we would like to show a toast.success message where we'll just say product added successfully. In the catch, we can console log the error if we really wanted to, and we can show a toast, let's say, such as something went wrong. And feel free to update this part if you really wish. Okay, now I'll save. There is one more thing we are missing here. We would like to just close the model, right? Once we submit it, we somehow want to close this. We're gonna get there just in a second, but for now, let's just have this as a to-do. Okay, so we just have our entire function. Now let's go ahead and create the component, which is going to be called as add product model. So this is going to be in the home page. That's why I'll just say add product model, call this, and let's try to create it. .jsx and import it. Okay. Now let's shrink the left-hand side, go into this component, and just try to build the UI, like what we're gonna have in the UI. So in the return statement, we would like to have a dialog component. Then here, if you want to take a look at the documentation from the Daisy UI components, you can see there is model component. Okay, so this is how they are using it. So you can see the preview, the HTML version of it, and then the JSX. Okay, so basically we're gonna add classes like model, model box, model action. Then we'll have the close button under a form that is method of dialog, so on and so forth. just notice everything is coming from the documentation that we're going to do just in a second. So in the dialog, we'll like to just have an ID first. That is going to be add product model. You can call this anything, but this is the name that I'll be going with. Then I'll add a model class. Then I'll just have a div with class name of model-box coming from this UI. Then we'd like to have a close button, which is going to be form, just like I have shown you a second ago from the documentation. This is the method of dialog with a button that has this X so that we can just see it on this right top corner. Okay, after this form, we would like to have the model header, which is going to be in H3 that says add new product. So this is what we have just built. Then we would like to build the form inputs, such as product name, price, and image URL. So here I'll go ahead, create a form component. This is not going to have an action. Let's say on submit, we would like to call a function. And that function is going to be coming from our use product store. Let's say destructure this function called add product. Okay, now let's save and pass this in. Inside this form, we would like to, let's just first add a class. I'll just say space y of 6. And then here I would like to have a div that is going to have the class name of grid, let's say gap of 6. I'll just save to get this formatting. Here we go. Inside this div, I will have the product name field, the input, let's say. Okay, so just to speed this up, I will go ahead, copy it and paste it, which is around 10 lines of code. Okay, so this is what I have just pasted, this part. 16 lines of code, and let me just walk you through it. So we have the form control class name on a div, then we have the label that says product name, then we have the icon, let's import it, and we have an input that is taking this placeholder that says enter the product name. We have this type of text, some classes just to make it look nice, and value as well as the onChange method. So let's go ahead and get this function as well as the form data state from our hook. So let's say form data as well as the set form data function. Okay, so when we type into this input, it's going to update the name field. It will keep all the previous state in the form, but only update the name field. Okay. So after this div and then the second one, we would like to have the product price input. And just to speed this up, once again, I'll go ahead, copy it and paste it. Just like this, you can grab this from the GitHub repo. So this is the exact same thing. We are just changing the label, the icon, as well as the input. It is type of number, minimum can be 0, the step, so how many what will be the step to increment the value, the placeholder, class name, and the value will be coming from form data, but this time it will be price. And in the same way, we will just update the price when we type into it. So after this div and then the other one, finally, we would like to have the product image. And this will be a URL that we're gonna just copy and paste. So let me just provide this. We have the image icon, the label, and this is the image state that we are trying to update. Let me save and take a look at the output. So when I click to this, nothing happens, right? Because we didn't add an onClick function to this button, right? Where is it? Okay, so when we just say add product button, we don't have any onClick events. So I would like to just go here and say onClick, and here, this is basically what we would like to do. Let me auto complete this. So we'll say from the document, find an element with this ID, which is called as add product model, right? This is what we have for this dialog. And we're gonna call the show model method. Let's save. If I click to it, there we go. It just updates the UI, opens up the model, right? We can put the name, price, and the image URL. Okay, and we can close it. Now when we click to the backdrop, it doesn't close, right? Because we don't really have this backdrop UI. For this, we need to go, just scroll to the very bottom. Let's shrink this one as well. And maybe we can shrink this one. Okay. So just, I think still inside the form, or maybe inside the dialog, let's just go down here, just above the dialog, I will put a backdrop component, which is going to be a form method of dialog. This is the class name coming from this UI, and we just have a button. Now let's test this out. If I click to the background, it actually closes. Okay, the only thing that we are missing is the actions. So here we'd like to have a cancel button as well as the submit button. Let's try to implement it. So I think after this div and this one, but still inside the form, I will go ahead and have my model actions. So I just paste the code, which is around 10 lines of code, and let me walk you through it. So we have this model action class name coming from this UI, the form element, so that we can just cancel this process, and then the submit button. And this button will be disabled if we don't have the name field, or if we don't have the price field, or if we don't have the image. And if we are in the loading state, so this will be disabled. If any of these are valid, will be in the disabled state. But the loading is undefined, so let's go ahead and grab this. There we go, from the store, and we can import this icon. If we are in the loading state, we're going to see a loading spinner, but else we would see this text with the icon. Let's save and take a look at the output. Okay, so I can cancel it, and let's try to add a product. I'll just visit Unsplash. So let's just say keyboard, copy this image URL, image address. I'll just say premium keyboard. Price could be, I don't know, let's just say $89. The image URL, paste this in, add the product. We are in the loading state. There we go, product added successfully. UI has been updated, but we didn't close the model. It is because we have this as a to-do in the add product method. So let's go ahead, try to add this to-do. I'll delete this, and I think you know what to do at this point. Basically, we'll just say document.getElementById, which is this one. We're gonna find the ID, just make sure it is matching with what we have here, and we'll just say close. Let's save and try to add a new one. So I don't know why it says something went wrong, but let's refresh. It is actually working. I think when we save this product store, because of the hot reloading, it sometimes crashes, but other than this, if you refresh the page, it works without any issues. I'll just try to add something else. Let's just say MacBook. Price could be, let's say $1,000. For the image URL, let's just get one. Okay, I'll copy this one actually. Copy image address, paste this in, add the product. Once it is added, model has been closed and we can see the product. Now when we click to this one, it takes us to the product page with its ID. And it's because this is what we have in the product cart. So let me show this. So in this cart actions, we have this link. This is something that we have built previously. Sorry, I can't talk, but there we go. We have a link that will take us to the product page with the product ID. Okay, let's save this component. And I think we have just built the add product functionality. Let me just quickly go over it once again. We have created a form state to be able to keep track of the fields. we have created the setter function to be able to update the state, and a helper function that will allow us to reset the form once we add the product. So we can just call this and clear the form. And we have add product function, where we just prevent the default because this is a form submission. We set the loading state to be true. Finally, it's going to be false. And in the try, we would like to get the form data, send it to our endpoint, fetch the new products because database has been updated, show a success toast, reset the form, and close the model. In the catch, handle it properly, and just call it a day. So with that, I think that's gonna be it for this section, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. So now it is time to build the product page, which is gonna be looking like this. So we're gonna have the image on the left-hand side, and then the product details on the right-hand side. We should be able to delete it or save the changes if we have any update. And we should be able to go back to the homepage with the help of this link. So let's go ahead and build this page. First, instead of building the UI, we will visit the store and try to create our functions. So I'll just go maybe below to the delete product. I would like to create a function called fetch product. So first we would like to fetch the product itself. And this is going to be an async function taking the product ID as the first argument. And we would like to have one more function to be able to update the product. So first we would like to fetch the product so that we can display it on the UI. And when we click to this button, we would like to send a request to be able to update the data in the database. Okay, and we would like to have one more state to be able to keep track of the current product, right? So when we, let me show this. When we click to this product, we would like to have this as the current product. If we click to this one, this is going to be the current product, so on and so forth. So we're going to have a state for this. I will go and create it above. Let's say current product. Initially, this is going to be null. Once we fetch a product, we will make this to be the current product. Okay, so I'll go into the fetch function. Here, I'll just first set the loading state to be true, have a try catch, and finally block. Finally, the loading state will be false as always. And here we can get our response by sending a request with axios.get to our endpoint, which is base URL API products, and then the products ID, like the product that we would like to fetch. And I will update my state with it. So I'll just say current product is gonna be whatever the data is. And I would like to just fill the form data with the incoming data, right? So let's just say have all the space. Form data is gonna be response.data.data. Let's just say pre-fill form with current product data. Okay, and we can just say error is going to be null as well because we are in the try block. And in the catch, we can console log the error and just set the error with it. So I'll just say set. Okay, and obviously the current product is going to be null because it means we couldn't fetch it. Finally, we're going to go ahead and build the update product function, and I can just speed up the process a little bit. We'll have try catch, and finally loading state will be false. And here I would like to get the form data because we are going to be changing it, right? When we type something in, form data will change, and this is the form data we will send to the API. Okay, so I just grab it from the state. I'll say const response await axios.put method, and to our base URL, here we'll just send the form data. Then we can say set the current product with the incoming data, which is the new data for the product. We can show the toast of success, and then in the catch, let's say toast.error, and just console log it. Okay, so with that, that's gonna be it for our functions as well as the state that we have just created. I will go and visit the product page component. We can destructure those values from the store, and then we can build the UI. So first things first, I will just get my values from product store, and instead of typing this all out, I will just grab everything. So we are getting the current product, form data, the setter function, loading error states, and then the other three functions. And now we'll be using navigate just in a second. Let's say use navigate, which is coming from React Router DOM, and we'll use the use params hook to be able to fetch the product ID in the URL. So in the URL, we have an ID field, right? We would like to fetch it. And for this, we have this handful hook that we can use. And this is called as ID because in the app.jsx, here we just add ID. If you call this as hello, then you would go here, destructure this as hello, right? But we're going to go with the ID. Okay, the navigate is a function. Once again, we'll be using it just in a second. Let's say use effect. Here in this use effect, we would like to fetch the product, and the ID is going to be coming from the URL that we're going to pass. And let's add the fetch product function here, as well as the ID. So with that, let me just try to console log the current product, which is coming from line 23. Open up our terminal. From the line 23, we can get a product, which is the MacBook with the ID of 4. And we can double check this. The ID of 4 is the MacBook product. Let's take a look at this one. Now it has been updated. This is the keyboard that we can see. So that means our functions are working properly. And let's add a loading state to update the UI. We'll say if we are in the loading state, show a spinner. And if we have an error, then update the UI with the error message. So for a split second, we should have a loading state. I don't know if you can see it, but for a split second, we have it. If we don't have an error, if we don't have an loading state, then we can actually return the UI. So I'll just have a div. Let's go ahead, close this up. And we'll have a bunch of different class names, such as container, mxauto, padding x of 4, y of 8, and maximum width of 4x large. And I think inside we can go ahead build a button that would take us to the home page. We'll just say arrow left icon. On click to it, we are navigating user back to the home page. Now you might ask, why didn't we use something like link and then add a to property? Well, it's just because I wanted to show you this. You can use the navigate function to navigate users to the different pages. So you could use a link here in this example. Okay, now let's save, take a look at the output. This is what we got. If I click it, oops. So for some reason, we got the loading state. I think it's because of my computer, but let's just try to test this out. I can click it. Now we'll be in the home page. Okay, so after this button, we would like to have a div with some classes, which are going to be grid columns of 1, medium screens and above, grid columns will be 2, and gap of 8. So first, we would like to have the product image, which is going to be on the left-hand side. And I will copy it, paste it, delete this comment. There we go. We have a div with the round with large, overflow hidden, some box shadow, and background color with the image, which is the current product.image. And after this div, we would like to have the product form. So I will go ahead, maybe type this out. So let's say we will have the product form where we have a div with the class name of card, background, base of 100, and then shadow of large, let's say. Inside, we'll have a div with class name of card body. Then we'll like to have h2. Let me get this. It says edit product. which is h2, card title, text 2x large, and some margin bottom. After the h2, we'd like to have a form element. We don't really need an action, but instead we will have an onSubmit function. So in this function, we're going to take the event and we'll try to event.prevent default. Then we'll like to say update product, and we're going to pass the product ID, which is coming from the URL. Then here we can add a class name after the onSubmit. I'll say space y of 6. In the form, we would like to have the product name. So this is going to be a label as well as an input that I will just provide. Okay, so we have 10 lines of code, form control, where we have a label that says product name, and then the input, which is going to update the name field in the form data. After the product name, we would like to have the product price. Let me grab this and paste it below. There we go. Same for the price field, right? And after the price, we're going to get the product image URL. So just go below to this div, still inside the form, paste this in, there we go. We are just updating the image field. And finally, we will have the form actions, which are going to be these buttons. Okay, let me just save, get this formatting. Still inside the form, I'll just say form actions. Okay, I think I can copy and paste this, which is around 20 lines of code. I'll walk you through it. Okay, so on click, we have this handle delete function, which is something that we are going to create in a second. We have this icon with the text, and the class name is button error, so that it would look like this. And then we have the submit button. It will be disabled if you are in the loading state and if we don't have any of these fields. If you are in the loading state, we'll see a spinner, but else we'll see this save icon with this text. Okay, so let's try to create this handle delete function above. So I'll just say const handle delete. That's going to be an arrow function. We would like to just call await delete product with this ID, and then navigate user back to the home page. Now we're using it await. This should be async. Let's save and take a look at the output. Okay, so now I can just delete this product. Before we try to delete it, let's update the name. I'll just say MacBook Pro now. Let's save the change. Product updated successfully. We can go back to the home page, and here we can see name has been updated. And now let's try to delete it from this page. I will click it. It has been deleted immediately, but maybe when we could ask a question, right? Like a confirmation message. So that's why I'll just say if window.confirm, and we are gonna ask a message. So we'll just say, are you sure you want to delete this product? If users function and navigate them to the home page. Let's take a look at it once again. I will click to it. It will ask me this confirmation message. If I say cancel, nothing will happen. But if I say yes, it should delete it and take us to the home page. Okay, let's try to create one more product. And for some reason, we have some form data. Let's just add it. Okay, so from the home page, I think this doesn't work, or does it? Okay, so it looks like we have already implemented. Let's take a look at the product card. Okay, so it looks like we have already implemented that. So with that, I believe we have built every single functionality where we can add a product, delete it, and visit the product page, update it. We can refetch our products. We can have rate limiting, and our themes are working without any issues. Now I'll go ahead and create a couple of different products just to make sure this is responsive. And if so, we're going to go ahead and deploy this application. And let's actually try to add all these products together. So if you think we're going to go ahead and type everything manually, then you're wrong. This would take around 5 minutes. So instead, we can just do it in pretty quickly, right? And for this, we have a concept called seeds. Let me just explain this. We're gonna go into the backend folder, create a folder called seeds, and I would like to call the products.js file. So this is a file that you can grab from the GitHub repo. This is what I'll be doing. Just copy it and paste it. This is not really important, and I will walk you through it. So we have an array of simple products. So we have wireless headphones, keyboards, so on and so forth. Each product has a name, price, and image. So we're gonna map through this array and just seed our database. That means we'll just add some test data that we can use. Okay, this is a concept that we generally do when we are building an application in the development process. You would like to just add data into it instead of creating manually. And this is what we call the seeding the database. And here is the code. We have a function basically that we are calling, and this function first delete everything in the database and it insert all the products. So we are mapping through this array, and for each of them, basically we're adding those values, console logging something so that we can know that everything is done successfully and handle the error properly. And process exit 0 here, it means that success code, and exit with the 1 means not success code, right? Fail code. Okay, so with this in mind, let's go ahead and try to run this file. I will open up a new terminal and just say node, go under the backend, visit the seeds folder, let's just say seeds, and then run the products file. Run this. It says database seeded successfully. Let's refresh. We should be able to get all these products. Okay, now we can just take a look if everything is working properly, if it is responsive or not. So here initially we are 3 columns, then 2, and then 1. And let's take a look at the product page. This is responsive as well. It just works without any issues. Okay, so with that, I think we can deploy this application. So to be able to deploy our application, we need to do some configurations in our code base. But before we jump into the code, let's take a look at the diagrams to be able to understand the current state of our application and how are we going to approach to the deployment. So this is the current state. This is what we have. We are running our React application on localhost 5173 and our API on 3000. So instead of deploying this one and this one separately, I would like to have both of them under the same domain. So I'll take my React application as well as my API, my Express server, and deploy both of them under the same domain. So instead of having both of them, we will just serve both of these. We're going to see our React application, and if we visit our API, we're going to, let's just say API products. If we visit this endpoint, we can fetch our products, we can create one, delete one, so on and so forth. So just keep this in mind. Our entry point is the backend at this point, and from here, we will also serve the static assets, which is going to be our React application. Okay, so with this in mind, let's go ahead and try to configure this. So first, I will go under the backend, and under the front end, let's delete the node modules, because when we deploy our application, first we will push them to our GitHub account, right? And in our GitHub account, most of the time, we don't really have the node modules. So this is what we'll be doing. Let's just delete them. And we're going to have this git ignore folder, put it outside. And here I will put .env so that our .env files will be ignored, so that we don't really push our credentials to the GitHub, right? And I can delete this comment. Let's just delete it. Okay. So this is the first thing that we have done. Delete the node modules and create this git ignore in the root. Actually, I just drag it and drop it from the front end. Then I will go into the package.json and create a build command. Let me put a comma. So in the deployment in the deployment environment, which is going to be render.com, a free platform that we can use to deploy our application. So here we are going to run this command called build. And here, first things first, we would like to get our node modules for both the backend and frontend. So here we'll just say, go ahead and run the npm install command and then run it once again, but this time inside the frontend. So we'll just say -- prefix frontend folder. And once you have done this, finally go ahead, run npm run build. Let me shrink the left hand side and run this under the frontend folder. So let's try to see this in action. I will kill everything, open up my terminal in the left hand side. Let's say npm run build. Frontend, we don't have the dist folder. So once we run this build command will give us a dist folder under the frontend. And there we go, we just got that, and we also got the node modules for the frontend as well as for the backend. Okay, so you might ask why we don't have it under the backend folder. It's because we have our package.json here in the root, and this is the npm install that we just run it in the root, right? We didn't say something like -- prefix backend, right? We got the node modules as well as the dist folder. We'll be using dist folder to be able to serve our React application just in a couple of seconds. So let's save this, and we would like to have a start command that is going to run the server.js with the node. Right? In development, we are running it with the nodemon so that it would keep track of the changes. But in the production, we will run this only once with the node command. Okay, so that was the first step. Now let's go into the backend under the server.js and write some code for the deployment configuration. So I'll go ahead, import the path. Let's say import path from path. This is a built-in module in Node, so you don't really need to install this. Let's delete this comment and shrink this. After all of our routes, we're gonna write some code, and I would like to get a variable. So let's say __ their name, which is gonna be path.resolve. So we're gonna be using this to keep track of the directory that we are in. So after this middleware, just go ahead and type this out with me. So we'll say if process.env.node.env is equal to production. And we don't have this environment variable, so let's go ahead and create it. So far it should be development, right? But in the production, in the render.com, we will actually make this to be equal to production. For now, let's just say development. If this is equal to production, then we would like to serve our React application, right? Let's say React app. And how can we make this happen? Well, we'll use a middleware coming from Express. We'll just say express.static so that we can turn them into static assets. And we'll say path.join __ their name. This is the variable that we had. We are in the root, okay? Not in the backend, not in the front end, but we are in the root. From here, we would like to go under the front end, and from here, we would like to go under the dist folder. As I said, this is the folder that is production ready for our React application. So this is our static assets, and we would like to say app.get any route other than this API products. We would like to run this controller function where we'll take the request and response, and we will send a file which will be this index.html. So this will serve our React application. Now let me copy this and paste it. So here we just said res.send file. Once again, go into the root. From there, go under the front end, under the dist, and send this index.html file. Our React application, and let's try to open up our terminal, convert this into production. We'll just test this out as if we are in the production. And one more thing, in the product store, we are always sending a request to localhost 3000. But in production, when we deploy our application, there will not be anything called localhost, right? So maybe our URL will be something like mystore.com or anything, right? It could be my Postgres store.com. So we don't really know it upfront, right? And there is not going to be anything called localhost. This will be only available in development. So that's why we're going to go ahead and make this to be dynamic. So we'll just say if we are in the development, let's say meta.env.mode is equal to development, then we would like to send request to localhost 3000. But in production, we're going to just send a request to our domain. Since we don't know it beforehand, we can leave it as an empty string, and it will understand whatever that is. So because we have this base URL, so whatever that is, slash and our endpoint. Okay, I hope that makes sense. We just made our base URL to be dynamic. So let's say base URL will be dynamic depending on the, let's say, environment, either production or development. Okay, so with this, I'll open up my terminal, clear this up, and I'll say npm run build. This is going to build our application, and then we'll just say npm start. Okay, so backend is started on this port. Let's take a look at our diagram one last time. If we visit this URL, we can both get our React application as well as our API. So let's visit localhost 3000. So notice how I visit localhost 3000, but I can still see our React application. Previously, we have to visit 5173. So if you refresh this now, this doesn't work because we are serving both our API as well as our React application under this URL. So I know I have made it to be too long. I have explained so much. I hope I didn't make it any complicated. And now, as you can tell, the images are not working. It is because of the, I believe, helmet. So I'll go here. Let's just fix this. It is because of the content security policy. I'll just say content security policy to be false. I will not get into the details. If you want to research it, I would definitely recommend it. So I'll just leave this as an assignment. But if you change this to be false at the moment and try to run your server from scratch, we should be able to get the images I was going to say, but for some reason we could not. So I have just debugged this a little bit. If you go ahead, kill your terminal and run npm run build. Once this is done, you can run the npm start. And now it should be working out as expected. We can get the images. And there is one thing that I'd like to update, which is related to rate limiting. So from the argchat.js file, I will change these values a little bit so that like this is really like extremely rate limited, and that was for testing purposes. Here I'll just make this to be 30. Let's say this will be 5, and our capacity could be 10, could be 20. I'll just save, and this should be good to go. Let's kill this and restart it once again. We can refresh, we can edit this product. So I'll just say monitor 123, change the price to be 59, or let's just say 123. save the changes, go back to the home page. Everything has been updated as expected. We can delete products. Let's just delete this one. Product deleted successfully, and we can delete it from the product page as well. Okay, I'll click to it. There we go. And it should be working responsive. Like up until here, this is fine. And we can refresh the data. Okay, so with that, it looks like everything is working as expected. Now the only thing we're left is to push this code to our GitHub account and then deploy it with the help of render.com. So I will go ahead and create a repo. I'll just say PERN crash course. You can call this anything. This is the name that I'll be going with. And until I publish this video, I'll make this to be private. At the moment you're watching this video, it is going to be public, but for now it will be private. Let's say create the repo, then we will copy this, but first we need to initialize this as a GitHub repository. So I'll just open up my terminal in the left hand side. Let's just say git init. Okay, as we can tell, the .env as well as the node modules have been ignored, and the dist folder too. So we'll just say git add all, git commit, and I'll just say project completed. Okay, now I'll just clear this up, paste what I have copied. This should take our local code and push it to our GitHub account into this repository. There we go, it has just been pushed. Now we can visit render.com, and in the pricing page that you can see, they have a free plan. You don't need to pay anything, even a credit card needed. I mean, it is not needed. And we can visit the dashboard page and try to deploy this application. This is what I have deployed previously just to test this out, but now we're going to do it from scratch. So let's say add a new web service. And like your UI might look a little bit different if you don't have any products or any deployment, but you should be able to see something like new web service. So just click to it and select the GitHub repository. In my case, this is what I have that I would like to deploy. Let's say connect. And here we'll just scroll down. For the build command, we would like to have this one, npm run build, which is this build command. I told you previously we are going to be running this on the render.com. So before we try to deploy our application, first we need to get the dependencies and to build our application. And once we build it, we're going to run this start command. So let's say npm run build for the build command and npm start or npm run start for the start command. And finally, we'll say free plan, and let's try to add our environment variables. So here I will go ahead, visit my .env file. Now I have told you previously we don't really need it for the production. So I can delete that, and let me delete all the spaces. And we can grab all of them, copy, and paste it here. So there we go, we got the port, everything. And for the node env, you can delete this. This is what I'll be doing. Just go ahead and delete it. Render will understand that we are in the production because we are deploying this application. So you don't need to add that environment variable. Okay, so with that, I think we can just say deploy the web service. This will take around 2 minutes, I believe, maybe shorter or maybe a little bit longer. But once this is done, I'll just be right back. So it looks like it has been deployed. It says live, even though we have an error coming from our chat. This is not really that important. Looks like our service is live. Let's go ahead and try to visit it under this URL. In your case, it could be different. Just click to it and we should be able to see our application. There we go. Let's try to test this out. We can refetch. We can add a new product. So I'll go ahead to say keyboard, add a $99 price and visit the Unsplash just to get a URL. say keyboard. I'll copy this one, paste this in, add the product. Hopefully it should update the UI. We can update it. Let's say keyboard 123. We can change the price. I'll leave it as it is. There we go. It looks like it just works without any issues. We can change the theme, and this should be responsive too. Same for the product page. Okay. And I almost forgot, but this value is static. So currently we have 7 products, but for some reason this says 8. It's because we should visit the Navbar component. Instead of having this as 8, we should get the length of the products from our product store. So probably you have already fixed this, but I just realized. So I need to go ahead, get my product store from here and destructure the products array. So I'll just say products, let's say products.length. And if this is an empty array, we would get 0, but else we would get the actual value. Now in the production, this does not update. You need to add your changes, and let's actually do it. I will open up my terminal. Let's clear this up. I'll say git add all, git commit -m, let's say navbar updated, and I'll just say git push. Now whenever you push new change to your GitHub account, to your GitHub repository, Render will see it immediately. Let's see where that is. So you can visit your dashboard. It will notice that new change and it will try to deploy your application from scratch. So here we can see now it is trying to deploy it once again. And once this is done, I'll just be right back. So it looks like it has been deployed once again. Let's try to visit it. Even though it says in progress, I think it should be live. Okay, now we can see it is working, where we have 7 products. If we go ahead and try to delete it, it should update, where we have 6 products. Okay, so with that, now we know how to deploy our application, as well as how to update it in production, right? All you have to do, just add a new commit, push it, and Render will notice your changes and deploy your application from scratch. Okay, so with that, I think that's gonna be it for this entire application. Hopefully you'll learn something new from it, and I'll see you in the next one.